Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here. I'm Josh Vanek with Campus Compact, and this is the Centering Indigenous Knowledge webinar series. We want to thank our sponsors, the University of Montana, our presenting sponsor, and then Montana State University, Reach Higher Montana, and RJS Associates for helping us put this on. I also wanted just to make a quick note that we've rescheduled Chief Dull Knife College's session for next week. That's March 8th. So this time next week, we know a lot of folks will be traveling and at the AHEC student conference in Albuquerque, but we'll record it. So if that doesn't work for you, it'll be available that way. And I also wanted to make a quick note. The artwork that you see here is by Taryn Lasgun, and I'll put the link to his website. Folks have been asking about who made that beautiful artwork, and so we'll share that in the chat here. So without further ado, Dr. Carla Bird.
Thank you, Josh. I just wanted to extend a welcome to our audience and thank you so much for attending our series. So this series is really an idea that was facilitated by Campus Compact and supported by our sponsors. You know, Campus Compact, they really made an initiative to raise the awareness of the richness of Indigenous knowledge in our state, and to center the people and institutions who lead the movements there. We know that an 8-part series just scratches the surface of Indigenous knowledge, but we hope that it'll inspire our audience to learn more, seek out ways of how to support tribal colleges and their work in advancing and preserving Indigenous knowledge. Today, we are so fortunate to have our presenters, Elijah Hopkins and Tommy Christian, who both work in the area of student support and instructional leadership at Fort Peck Community College. They both work to ensure that the student body and faculty's cultural identities are woven into every aspect of the college. The mission of the Fort Peck Community College is to meet the unique educational needs of Native people on the reservation, as well as community members in the surrounding areas. FPCC is committed to preserving Indian culture, history, and beliefs, and to perpetuating them among the Indian people of all ages. FPCC promotes self-awareness through education necessary to build a career, a lifestyle, and to achieve a true sense of self-pride. Fort Peck Community College offers an AA in Native American Studies. The AA degree program is structured to present information from a general to specific perspective, so students gain a wide and varied knowledge of American Indian cultures and histories, as well as a focus on the Assiniboine Sioux cultures, histories, and perspectives. So courses include classes such as History and Culture of the Fort Peck Tribes, American Indian Education and Literature, Federal Indian Policy, as well as language courses, just to name a few. The Assiniboine and Sioux culture are interwoven in and out of the classroom as part of the student experience. Students are exposed to and participate in activities, events, and organizations which embody the unique tribal identities of Assiniboine and Sioux. Fort Peck leadership believes that student success is directly related to cultural awareness and identity. So with that being said, I know everybody's on mute, but I hope that everybody can extend a warm welcome to our presenters, both Elijah and Tommy. So with that, I'll let Elijah and Tommy take over.
Oha, haumi takiapi, petua shte chichiapi, dayaya hipi, washichia Elijah Hopkins, makiapi, the Kodia uspemiche, makiapi, he miedo. I want to thank everybody for joining us here today and allowing us to share a few things about Fort Peck Community College. I want to take a few minutes to, I guess, introduce Dekshi, Mr. Tommy Christian, myself. I'm a vice president for student services here at Fort Peck Community College, and I also dabble a little bit in some cultural activities as a way of retention for Fort Peck Community College adjunct faculty a little bit here and at another college in North Dakota, but it's a good thing to be here, and I feel very welcome. I want to thank Josh and Carla, Campus Compact, for inviting us here today. But Mr. Lakota Tommy Christian, he's pretty well known throughout Indian country for being a powwow announcer, and he's graciously joined Fort Peck Community College a couple years back, and we can kind of talk about that a little bit more later on and during our presentation. But he's graciously joined Fort Peck Community College. He's a former tribal executive board member for Fort Peck tribes. He was on our board of directors at Fort Peck Community College, and he's very involved culturally, not just locally here at Fort Peck Reservation, but really throughout Indian country. And so, but what I'd like to do is kind of give him the floor, and then Dekshi, if you could share some good words and maybe share a prayer for everybody, and then maybe we can move forward with our presentation.
I'll add it to a wopilai chicha, Toshka, Daya Chana. How me taki epi ambe tukile mi chante at awag lake, Nahana pe chuza pelo. Ohe chaje mi tawam nisha ge doba ima chiapi. My relatives, again, I'd like to welcome you all here to our little interview here, if you will. And as we do these things, we understand the importance of really taking advantage of this IT perspective as it relates to utilizing Zoom and podcasts and various other things of that sort to kind of convey a message of goodness, if you will. And as we do these things, we're going to start really realizing the importance of a cultural value system that should be diverse and yet unique, with a sense of enhancement and enrichment for the sake of the growth of our children. And that's all based on natural law. And that's what we're trying to provide here at the Fort Peck Community College for our young people. So with that all being said, I'm going to ask all of you to help me as we go into this little interview, this little sharing of information. I'm going to share a prayer with all of you. I'm going to sing a song, and in that song it says, everybody pray now, everybody pray now. Our children are having a hard time. Remember them, everybody pray now. That's what that prayer song says. So if you'll just bear with me as we do this. Aha, hey, atukashila na wakanta gata dewa doba unchi makana makaina. Na kumitaki epi wanagi makpea ktaya ge hocho kakta hupo. Ushia ke nichope. Ogia chawan mitaki epi unchi makao mani wayaza pina ha. Mitaki epi unchi makao mani. Chante yoksi jo mani. O ichaki apo ushu ichalapo. Giksi apo mitaki epi winuchalapi wichakchalapi. Makain japi hopshilapi unchinchalapi. Koshkapi we koshkapi chanko washte unkopi na we chose ani unkopi. Atukashila na wakantanga. Giksi apo mitaki epi agichita oyate kizuya ekta wichasha bile wiapile chanko washte unkopi. Atukashila na wakantanga. Oyate oyasi chanko luto aga omani o ichaki apo ushu ichalapo. Ambetukile naha homat elo naha. Makaya api olonga ahia waekte. Ushimala omakia naha mitaki epidaha. Tixiapo naha. Wayawa oyateki naha. Viewing this mayakapo mitaki epi okiapo. Ushu chalapo omakia naha. Kaya api olonga ahia waekte. Wana wachekiapo. Wana yai. Wachekiapo, wanayay, wachekiapo, hayya hiyay, wanayay, wachekiapo, hayya heyo, wakaye jakelena, otawo kaki jape. Keksuyapo yo, wachekiapo, hayya hiya, wanayay, wachekiapo, hayya heyo, hey, how mitaki oasi, wamakashka oasi, tushka.
Oh, hit you too. Pidame Adekshi, again, beautiful prayer. So I guess we'll get started here. I'll share my screen. Okay, so give me a thumbs up if you can see that's monitor. Are we good? You can see the PowerPoint presentation? We're good? Okay, all right. Okay, so centering Indigenous knowledge here at Fort Peck Community College. Just by virtue of my role at the college, my focus more is primarily on support services, heavy on retention programming, overseeing financial aid and whatnot. There are a few cultural arts classes that I teach related to pretty much traditional archery forms, but so I don't have a big background in that as far as instruction at Fort Peck Community College. But as Carla mentioned earlier, we do offer a lot of cultural arts classes, but there's some specific degrees. Later on, if people have questions, you can put them in the chat box if you'd like. But we do have a cultural arts certificate. About 3 years ago, it's a brand new program that we started. We have all these cultural arts classes, whether it's beading, moccasin making, all those types of things. Now we have an actual 1-year cert. And then about 3-4 years ago, we integrated an AA degree in Native languages. And here in Fort Peck, there's basically 2 tribes, the Assiniboine and Sioux tribes. Now, each of those tribes has various bands within it. And so sometimes when you listen to Tommy talk or myself, sometimes these terms are interchangeable. So Sioux is a lot of times it refers to Lakota, Dakota, or Nakota. And then the Assiniboine, a lot of times it refers to Nakona or Nakoda. And so depending upon which you choose, you'll have a specific track in that. And so that Native Language Studies is basically a brand new pilot program. And then, of course, we have a Native American Studies AA degree that's designed for transfer to other universities as well. So, but one of my passions, I guess, and one of my focuses is utilizing institutional funding or looking to other organizations that we partner with, tribal colleges, such as the American Indian College Fund. There are many others, but the American College Fund, otherwise known as AICF, is one of the biggest supporters, and it's basically like the private arm of AHEC, which is the American Indian Higher Education Consortium, which Fort Peck Community College is a member institution. There's about 38 of us, I believe, scattered throughout the United States. But because of that, there's strength in numbers. And so AICF really does a lot of work to get private funding. And then they offer a lot of mini grants and awards to tribal colleges like Fort Peck. And so every year I've tried to apply for grants and awards, and just because of the institutional mission to provide cultural literacy, not just for our students, but really for the community. And so I thought it was really important that in addition to academic coursework, we're providing workshops that regardless of your age, you're able to participate in these cultural workshops. And so bow making is one of those courses. And I think we have a couple photos here on the lower left-hand corner. There's the facilitator, Tashi Jeremy Redigo was their instructor for this workshop. And there was a gentleman from Poplar High School that joined us. But and in the upper right-hand corner, there was another individual that came all the way down from Canada. And so we really try to open up these workshops to anybody, and really try to make it along with our basically our model at the college here is family education model. Okay. Later on, we'll talk about the Buffalo Chaser model and the society that we aspire to achieve here at the college. But under this family education model, we want to encourage family members to take courses and to join the workshops to support students. And so it's really like a family event in terms of their education. So bow making, super important. quilling, bow case making. I'll be facilitating that course or that workshop next month. Porcupine quill work, that's one of our basically our lost cultural art forms that we've tried to revive. And typically those traditionally were gendered. You know, bow making was done by the males, but we're in 2023, so naturally we open up to everybody. And so men and women, regardless how you identify, it's open up to everybody. Hide tanning, same with that. And we have a video here that we want to share with you. One of the facilitators in the lower right-hand corner, give a little bit of a background on this. His name's Earl Bullhead. And I had the opportunity to meet Earl through Mr. Tommy Christian. They're brothers. Culturally, they're brothers. But Mr. Earl Bullhead, he's kind of an internationally renowned singer for the Ikjewi Chasha drum group, and amongst a lot of other things. His music's kind of known all over through Indian country. And so again, he graciously agreed to come on campus and share some things with us, because when we share cultural knowledge, cultural workshops, we want to be able to get beyond just an academic space where we're just talking about the history and stuff like this. We want to have hands-on experiential learning, land-based teachings. That's super important to our cultural identity. And so individuals like actually Tommy, actually Earl Bullhead, they came together and we had this workshop where we created our traditional drum. And in this traditional drum, there's a lot of teachings that go with it. And a lot of those things, what we call powwow nowadays, the hoka is usually the drum keeper, and they're the keeper of the songs that go with that drum. And so a lot of these things, and I know Dexy Tommy later on, he can share a little bit more about it. A lot of those things might be lost. And so this is our attempt to preserve the history, the knowledge that goes with some of these things. And so we have about a 4 or 5 minute video. I'll go ahead and share that.
Well, my name is Erwin B. Benedict Bullhead. I'm an enrolled member of what they call the Standing Rock Reservation. Right? Now while you're at it, you need to find a center.
Okay.
You need to find a center. I've been a teacher now since I was 19 years old.
Okay.
I wanted to know where this all began. Often wondered, why there's certain things that we have to practice on the drum that are still carried on. It's a little bit too much, isn't it? You want to make sure those go in first. So those who understand the ways of the drum, they'll find protection. They'll find faith. The songs that we sing on that drum are in our language, are composed by our relatives, our forefathers. So it's important to remember those things. So it's a study. Where does that song come from? Who composed that song? Let's not forget, There's got to be some honor in it.
Could go down just a little bit.
Make it closer on this line.
Yeah.
It's like a friend, like a buddy that you have to take care of. So develop this bond with it. Cautious about its relationship with the thunder. So you don't want no metal in there. And so you will become what they call a drum keeper. As a singer, they call it a hoka, keeper of songs. The thing to do now is get as much of that middle part sanded down outside. That belt sander, yeah. being that caretaker or that drum keeper is an awesome responsibility. You got to be prepared for everything with the song. Naming songs, giveaway songs, thank you songs, morning songs, closing songs, flag songs, different types, veteran songs. You have to be knowledgeable about the songs that you sing. I stayed 39 years old for 6 years because I didn't want to get old. And after I learned the word for chala, which chala means to be knowledgeable, wisdom. Chala is a blossom. So when I accepted that, come on, bring it in. I started living my age. I was the first certified language teacher in North Dakota. And it worked out beautifully. So that's all I do is teach kids the language through songs. I listened to my uncle's advice, and I'm at that age now. He said, whenever people ask you to do something for you, they're depending on you. And so you do your best. Because there's a come a time when you get old and you can't do those anymore. You'll know in your heart and your mind that you've always done your best. You just go through that way and snug it up. Make sure that sticks out. But just snug it, don't tighten it. I am 72 years old. Every time. Every song I ever sang, I can give it my best.
Okay, so actually, Tommy, is there anything you want to add to that presentation? Because back, we did that workshop about not last summer, but the summer before. And we ended up doing a presentation down at a language conference called the Truswecha Language Conference for the Ocheki Shakoe down in Rapid City. So this huge auditorium that we were in there, we had Earl Bullhood did a presentation. We shared part of that video, and he had about an hour-long presentation, and him and Mr. Christian talked about the history. There's a whole story that goes with that. But is there anything you want to share that was left out of there, Tommy?
Yeah, how hecho dai chanu toshka. Oh man, okay. But anyway, my relatives, as you see those things, the young people making that drum, I was sharing with Toshka this morning, the linear teaching aspect of what we represent as a college, that's for the mind, eh? But when you witness this experiential teaching of hands-on stuff, that's kind of an abstract learning process where it's for the heart. And once we understand that difference that exists there, we realize when we meld them together, it gives the students a true sense of balance. And that's what we aspire to in our cultural value system. And we want to share that and get rid of all the superstitions, all the voodoo that they say. We go in little voodoo huts and stuff like that. We want to dispel some of those untruths and really help our students enhance their ability to go out and really be a part of and become a part of their purpose and their dedication as they spend time on our Mother Earth. And we're not here to create good Indians. We're here to create good human beings, because the key word to that whole process is inclusivity. We include everything and everybody into that, what we call in our language Wamakashka, Changleshka, that whole circle of life that includes everything and everybody, eh? And so, again, that's really important that we understand that this process that we develop through these abstract learning, that experiential teaching, really enhances their ability to broaden their peripherals or their worldview to the point to where, especially if you're on a reservation in a tribal college, we kind of take that for granted because, like a lot of us on the reservation, we just grew up with that. We just, that's weird. And so when we prepare our students to go beyond Fort Peck Community College and possibly attend university, they'll be exposed to a cultural value system that they weren't brought up with, but yet they were open enough and strong enough and courageous enough to apply some of these teachings in a good way. And so it's key and important that we continue to understand the true sense of land-based teachings. And there's so many. We're going to do a buffalo hunt, but Toshka, you talk about that and how we're going to apply that into the understanding of this diversity that exists there within the college itself, but at the same time, how inclusive it is for everybody and anybody, getting rid of all that superstitious BS. And so anyway, I just wanted to add that in there, but that's it to die, Toshka. Yeah.
Oh. And so, as you can tell, just from my personal experience of trying to have a better understanding of my own identity and trying to share things with individuals, these cultural workshops, when students are exposed to them, community members, whoever they are, there's a term that I've heard speakers use, Dagawa Sikoyake, everything is connected, right? So when you make a bowl, if you want to make it traditionally, for example, where do you get the woods? What type of plants? When do you harvest them? How do you make the sinew? They're all tied to like the plants and the earth, the buffalo, all those. There's a season to pick them, and then there's a culturally appropriate and responsible way to go about doing that. You know, like through prayer, when we open up any of our presentations, we're always trying to do that. Share things, utilize the language when we can, not to impress, but to try and share. And that way, students will have a natural interest in wanting to pick these things up. And so, and if you're going to make a bowl, for example, where are you going to put it? Traditionally, we would use buckskin. So then that turned into a whole nother workshop. Man, we got to do a hide tanning workshop. And so on and so forth. But there's just a lot to it. The artwork that goes into those things, the symbols, there's just really a lot. And so one of the key takeaways from this presentation that I'm hoping that the viewers, the listeners, the audience, they can kind of take away from this is that when we talk with Dekshi Tommy and individuals like Earl Bullhead, one of the main things is that we want students to feel included. That we talked about this circle of life, as Dekshi Tommy talks about the Chanhadeska Wakan. And so within that circle, everyone's included. And so we've adopted this other philosophy, I guess you would say, is the Buffalo Chasers Society. Back in the late 2000s, the tribal college president here at Fort Peck Community College, his name was Dr. James Shanley. And we had a cultural liaison officer that worked for the college. His name was Hunga Robert Forstar. And Robert Forstar and Mr. Jim Shanley, they had this understanding and this belief in the culture. And so the president asked Mr. Forstar if he would gift the college with a song, our own song. At the time, we believe there was, and I'm still not sure if there are any other tribal colleges that have their own school song. And it's not necessarily that we are the Buffalo Chasers in terms of being a mascot. It's more of like an ideology and a philosophy and a way of living to acknowledge the way of life that we came from, following the buffalo as a way of sustenance. And so this song, whenever we have our own podcast that we do, the Buffalo Chasers podcast, we'll talk about that later. We always try to start with that song and we end the podcast with that song because song is super important to our identity and who we are. But the words of this song, it's in the Assiniboine language, but it basically says, my grandfather, that which is sacred, likes us. The Buffalo Chasers are looking back at us and are smiling as they go. And so whenever we try to do any of our programming and educational cultural literacy, this Buffalo Chaser Society model is really at the heart of what we're trying to do. And so, which brings us to our next slide here. Okay, so Fort Peck Community College is really, like all of our tribal colleges, is really kind of the light of our communities. In partnership with the Fort Peck tribes, the Fort Peck tribes has a pretty large cultural herd from all the buffalo that were wandering outside of the parks down in Yellowstone. There was this agreement made and this compact. And so over the years, since 2000 sometime, we have a lot of buffalo, and there's another, I guess, treaty council that Fort Peck is involved with, where we have a lot of buffalo that we share almost internationally with other tribes. And going back to this Buffalo Chaser Society model, we wanted to, because we are the Buffalo Chasers, it seemed fitting that we would increase our cultural literacy and responsiveness and do things that are experiential in nature. And that includes harvesting a buffalo. And so we had this idea that back in last summer, we were going to go ahead and do a cultural buffalo harvest. And we picked a date. By the time we got through all the paperwork and red tape, December 21st was the date we were going to do it. But then this big Arctic front came down, and for whatever reason, we just got pushed back. And so Friday, March 10th is our new date. Okay. And so, but part of the idea of doing this buffalo hunt is that we include the whole community. Anybody that wants to come, they can come check it out. There's been a number of buffalo hunts that for tribal members, and then even non-tribal members can come onto the Fort Peck Reservation and go through a process and they can hunt. But like anything, a lot of times there's barriers to access. And so even for tribal members, it's about $500 just to apply for the tag if you get the tag. And then there's a whole process to go through of harvesting the buffalo. And usually people will hunt the buffalo, to shoot the buffalo. They'll load it up on their truck and they'll take it over a processor, pick up the meat in 2 weeks, then take some pictures, and they call it good. And what we were wanting to do, visiting a lot with Lakota and Tommy Christian about how can we do something like this, utilizing all of the buffalo and have it being more of a harvest type of philosophy. And so again, we're going to involve prayer. We're going to include our students, but the leadership of the college. And when we do this, we're going to harvest the buffalo. We're going to tan the hide. We are going to consult with local expert knowledge keepers on how to utilize all of the buffalo, including the taneja, the tripe, all of it. And so butchering and all that type of good stuff. And so actually, Tom, is there anything else that you want to add to this part?
Well, no, just establishing some sense of a protocol in respects to when they take a buffalo, because we look at it like a sacred kind of like sort of thing, and not take us our tribe, Lakota and Nakoda people for granted, but to understand we should establish a protocol in a spiritual way to look after the spirit of that buffalo that is sacrificing for our sake. And then, like what you said, utilize it as a way of kind of letting them know that they can do all this on their own if they want, and they don't have to send it to a processor where you have that hands-on experiential opportunity to really take advantage of it. And the taniga, the heart, kidneys, the liver, all that good stuff is really something that they start understanding they can utilize. In other words, the whole buffalo can be utilized in a manner for the sake of our survival. And that gets me to like a food sovereignty issue. I know you had some issues, some concerns there in respects to that. And so we can help people kind of get the message out there as far as managing our buffalo, but at the same time, taking into consideration the importance of food sovereignty, just to throw that in there, Tushka.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so Fort Peck Community College, like a lot of tribal colleges, is heavily grant driven. So there's a CDC grant that we were successful in receiving last spring, and so this part of that grant is to do a lot of community cultural workshops as well. And so the plan is to do things like wasna, basically like pemmican there's a season to pick all these medicines and roots and berries and all this good stuff. So we can use those things, incorporate it with the meat of this buffalo. We can make wasna, dry meat making class. These are all things that, even though certain families kept this knowledge, there's a lot of individuals in our community that for whatever reason just didn't grow up with it. And so we believe that by getting groups and families together and sharing, that it's the best way to promote health. Because again, this Chahadeska Waka, when we look at that symbol, it represents balance. Talked about that with Dexter Tommy earlier this morning. That's always in part of our programming, is how do we address mental, spiritual, physical, spiritual health. All those things are really important for our students in order for them to be successful. And so, but anyways, yeah, we're really looking forward to that workshop. Another project I was involved in directly, in lieu of a lot of federal funding coming down in the wake of the COVID pandemic, a lot of universities, colleges, especially tribal colleges like Fort Peck, we were trying to be creative in how we could utilize this funding to maximize retention services and to promote things like sustaining and preserving our cultures and languages. And so we had this idea that utilizing technology again, we would have an online virtual language table. And utilizing basically Zoom, we're able to connect with fluent speakers of Assiniboine and Sioux language. And when you'll see that bullet says connecting the Ocheti Shakoi. So Ocheti means like a fireplace, and Shakoi means 7. And so the 7 council fires is what that's referring to, of the Dakota, Lakota, Nakoda people. And so there's a shared language that I think is important, that was really kind of at the heart of why are we doing a virtual language table. There are some speakers here in Fort Peck on both, I guess, dialects of the reservation, but Fort Peck is really connected to a group of other reservations that share the same tribal language and culture. And so this online virtual program has enabled us to connect with these other speakers. And then today we have over 200 hours of fluent speaker recordings, over 10 speakers, and it represents, like we said, all 3 of the major dialects within the Ocheti Shakoi. Okay, and so I'm not going to read all this out here, but back in, right when the COVID pandemic hit, we just got Mr. Tommy Christian on board as the cultural liaison. We sat and we visited, and is how can we leverage the digital platforms that we were getting familiar with, which was Zoom at the time, and the services like Mr. Tommy Christian, who's kind of famous throughout Indian country in his ability to share and convey cultural knowledge, whether it's at powwows or ceremonies and whatnot. And so we came with this idea that we would have the Buffalo Chasers podcast. And so today, if you go to YouTube and you look for Fort Peck Community College, you will find a series of videos. Some of them are just little tutorials, how-tos, this and that. But there's one on language and culture, a playlist, and then there's another playlist called the Buffalo Chasers podcast. And we have about 84, I guess, episodes, video podcasts that have been archived dating back to, I believe, September of 2020. We were going weekly, but now it's usually maybe once a month. But within that, we've had different individuals that have joined the discussion, but all has to do with mental health. Because taking a step back, when the pandemic first hit, we were really kind of forced to do everything virtually. Our classes, our retention work. And so we've really had a good response, not just from the campus, the students, employees, administration, but really throughout the state and regionally. And then because of Mr. Christian's contacts, whether that's through powwow country, almost internationally, that we have some viewership, that they'll send us messages, and that it really support us and encourage us to continue doing the podcast and the messaging, because it's had a pretty big impact in terms of one, just retention, but also just recruitment for what Fort Peck Community College, the services that we provide. And then it's also just another way to promote, I guess you would say, indigenous methodologies and how we as Indian people choose to share our culture, but also utilizing technology. And that's kind of one of my, where I'm a little probably more experienced with technology. And so I think it's a good way to connect with elders, okay? Because our elders, they have a lot of stories to share, a lot of cultural knowledge. And so after visiting with actually Tommy Christian and Earl Bullhead, they came together, and it's kind of like, it's a pretty synergetic, dynamic opportunity for people to listen and share things. And so it's really kind of opened up our minds to a lot of possibilities moving forward. So Dexy, Tom, do you want to share any more about that?
You know, it's really important that, you know, when we first started the podcast, I was kind of a little apprehensive myself in respects of, oh man, can we do this? Can we utilize this? Because again, I didn't want to take away from the abstract learning process, but because of what was going on and everybody was holed up in their house and they couldn't go nowhere because of COVID, that dark cloud of COVID had a silver lining in it and really got us into understanding the capabilities of Zoom meetings, and of course it was addressing, and our primary concern was the mental health of our students. And so the intent wasn't to go nationwide or international. Our intent was just to do it for the sake of our students, so we can continue that communication in respects to keeping them not getting a cabin fever or anything like that, but it afforded them an opportunity to kind of express themselves or learn something, because we're always complaining about kids that are sitting on the couch and looking at their phones all the time. Well, we wanted to provide them with something they could watch that would be educational as well. And so we expanded that, we opened it up. And again, we got quite an audience out there, and it really turned out really well. A lot of people really appreciate it because, again, we tried to remain in that way, because we shared a prayer by Chekia before, and of course my older brother's song that he created for that in respects to that Tatanka Kuapi Okolaki chip, that society that we represented, and we wanted to do it in a respectful way. So with all that being said, we wanted to remain apolitical and apersonal. So the manner in which we presented this educational institution was from a perspective of that society of buffalo chasers. I don't care if you're Chinese, Japanese, white guy, black guy, whatever, you were included. If you signed up for Fort Peck Community College, you became a buffalo chaser. And then, of course, with that, we wanted to educate our people on how to really develop themselves in representing that society with dignity and honor, to really sustain the importance of who we were as a people, and so as a human beings. And so the integrity of that was really first and foremost. And we wanted to remain apolitical and apersonal in respects to the information that we shared. And you couldn't get a better person to do that other than Nietzsche Ole Chiemikot. That's he looks for the poor, that's the name that he carries. And he also carries a white man name of Earl Bullhead. And in that, he was really providing us with the understanding of the disposition of our people based on that diversity that we represented, but with the understanding that inclusivity was key. That was the basis. That was the focal point of what we were trying to accomplish is we're all in it together. And as we did these things, we were wanting to develop and create good human beings, not good Indians, but good human beings. And with that concept, we went forward and we shared a lot of information and utilizing in a kind of an anxious way, the Zoom process, this IT perspective, this informational technology that we didn't usually use. And so, but we did research it. I did ask other elders about how we should approach this, and they kind of give me the go ahead. And because our ability to adapt and kind of go along with everything, we needed to really make those adjustments as it relates to some of circumstances that we were under at that time, and that was COVID, and we wanted to be concern ourselves with with the support of other entities as well, like Dr. Debbie, his horses thunder, recognized that, and she really supported us in the beginning with that AICF stuff. She was managing a little grant or something like that, right, Tushka? In respects to helping us out to continue that on. And then, so again, it was for the sake of our students, their mental health and all that good stuff, working through that COVID process, but it evolved into what it is today. And just kind of a shared experience amongst all of us, all of the participants, in regards to remaining apolitical and apersonal, but just sharing. And we're not telling nobody nothing, we're sharing with them in a very respectful manner. And it's kind of a little bit different, addressing the understanding of linear teaching and abstract learning, that experiential teaching that goes on, and abstract learning. The abstract learning is for the heart, okay? Kind of develop your character like that. The linear is for the mind, the intellect. And then if we can bring those two together, like we did with the drum making and various other things, the pemmican making, the wasna, all that good stuff, we bring them together, and it gives our students that participate a sense of balance. And they just get amazed by it. Oh, great. But that all evolves from that land-based teachings that the college took it upon themselves to to provide for our students, just to enhance their ability to kind of expand their horizons in a good way, and not take for granted that they do live on an Indian reservation. And we wanted to share that because, and a lot of our participants are people that are just local here, just right here, that never realized that. Like when we grew up hunting deer. We're so poor, we didn't have nothing, so we had to hunt to eat, all that good stuff, go out and pick turnips and everything else. But that was provisions for ourselves. You could always tell when there was good hunting season, eh? You take your deer back, and the old ladies would get together, they have their little knives, and we'd sit around, be drinking coffee, playing cards. They'd be cutting the dry meat just thin, and they'd brag about it. Look how thin this one is. You could almost see through it, but they were good at it, eh? The older ladies. And then as a result of that, you could always tell how good the hunt was, and how well the meat was cut, as they would take the pieces of gristle, the pieces of fat that were on the meat, and they'd throw them in a big old tub. And then after they got all these little pieces like that, they'd put them in the oven and they'd roast them. And that's something that we call wogo. It's in Mexican, they call them chicharrones, eh? But us, we call it wogo. It's those little pieces of fat and little meat on there that they roast, and we call that Indian popcorn. But we'd eat that, a lot of salt on there and stuff. But that was long ago. I don't see too much of that anymore, as it relates to people that were cutting up the dry meat, making them sheets real thin. And then all over in your house, you got dry meat hanging all over in your house, but that was a part of our growing up, because again, that meant to us, that was food, that was survival for us, because we didn't have money to go to the store and get stuff. Making bread, gabubu bread, you knock that dough around and you make gabubu bread, pan bread, I think our relatives from the east over there call it gullet. But again, it's just something that in the reservation life, this is something that we were trying to convey and help our young people understand the importance of being able to adapt, being able to adjust to a very fast-paced world, a very fast place to live in, but at the same time have an opportunity and an ability to transition to a much slower way of life, eh? And kind of like that. Do you think that that's right there, Tushka? Would you agree with that? That's something that we're trying to do. And again, as we do these things, we understand the importance of that. The Fort Peck Community College, represented by this diversity, but also realizing the uniqueness based on our language and our protocol, and and it's all coming from natural law. And that's good for any human being. For the sake of it should become an enhancement and enrichment for the sake of the growth of our children. Yeah. And as you do, that means future, eh? And our children are our future. And in that, that's what we wanted to kind of open up and let them understand. Let's not take ourselves for granted, because there's issues that are coming forward in respects to being able to manage these things, share them in a good way, help people understand and participate, and take them on so that they'll know them personally, and be able to convey that, not only a message, but the actual experiential teachings that they learn, especially to their children, understanding the importance of family unity. Eh? And so you bring your family together, and that you're addressing food sovereignty. Go ahead, Pushka.
One of the things we'd always talked about, because we're literally for hours and hours, we would talk on the podcast, which are usually about an hour long, sometimes before and after, always visiting about things, right? And there was a natural evolution of when we first started. It was more or less mental health resources, sharing, whatnot. But now we've integrated, like I said, more land-based teachings. And then there was a transition where the campus opened up again. We're able to do these things like the buffalo hunt, whether it's cultural workshops, seeking medicines, and all those types of things. And so it's more of a natural fit. But the other thing that we had always talked about was that two things. Before the pandemic, like any other community, we were forced to get to know or choose to leverage IT in a better way. The other thing was when we start sharing things, breaking down silos, barriers, walls within our own communities, we want to do it in a good way. And so we had talked about this, the mentality. It was what you call an ideological paradigm shift. That's where we take those two dimes and we kind of slide them over there like that. But in all seriousness, paradigm shift, it's changing the way that we think about what we do, and to convey a message to students that there's balance in having an understanding of the academic Western model of education, but there's also a place for them at the table to learn Indigenous methodologies, the Buffalo Chasers model society, and together, when they balance those things out, that's how they're going to increase their opportunities and their success wherever it is that they choose to go, whether it's here or offside of the reservation, if they go to a mainstream institution, with hopefully the idea of bringing that back to the community that they come from. But the other thing, it forced administrators at the college and staff, faculty members, in lieu of the pandemic, is that our mission of our institution now has been forced to address who our students are outside of the reservation and outside the local communities of the reservation. We had students enroll because of our online programming. Maybe it's because of tribal members, because of the relocation program back in the 60s. Our 1-2 generations living in California, but they have this sense, this need, this identity to want to connect with their home community. And so I couldn't tell you the amount of messages and emails that we've received as a result of pushing our message out culturally through digital platforms. And I think it's forced us at the college to recognize that whether it's social media, but the IT access, creating educational opportunities and access to whoever our students are, wherever they are, as long as they have access to the internet, they're a part of this society in Fort Peck Community College. And so I think it's kind of a lasting impact, some of the work that we've done. And so moving forward, we'll probably always have this virtual component, even in a post-COVID pandemic world. There is one question that was in this Q&A. Will you be videoing the hunt? It would be so amazing to view the whole process. We intend to video and capture aspects of it, but due to limited staff and individuals with IT capability, it's going to be a little harder this first go around. But I might have to talk to our buddy Elon Musk if he can shoot down some internet out to us way out there in that pasture, because in the lower 48, it don't really get more rural than where we're at up there. It's really like very, very rural and desolate country. And so ideally we would live feed the whole thing, but we're definitely going to do our best to archive it and take videos and pictures and just share it as much as possible. Looks like, is there another question? What about connecting to MCAT? They have lots of folks in the equipment. Yeah, I'm gonna have to research MCAT. I honestly have no idea what MCAT even is, but we'll definitely look into it. Because the cool thing about it is that here at Fort Peck Community College, and I'm sure other tribal colleges do a similar thing, we have an arrangement now where every year we can do this buffalo hunt. And there's a lot of things that tie into it. We wanted to take the hide and utilize the original Dakota newspaper was a winter count hide. That's what they used to do. They would take a buffalo robe and they would brain tan the inside of it, and they would tell their stories through symbol. So one of our goals is really to take this first hide and to come together as a cultural committee at the college, include students, include everybody as much as possible, and identify moving forward what was that significant event of this year that we agree upon that we want to share through symbol on this hide. And this hide represents that everlasting legacy of the buffalo chaser model, and it's going to be archived and held in our auditorium area. Then every year we can put a different symbol on whatever that significant event was. A lot of tribes do that, but that's just an indigenous way to take back our storytelling and sharing of who and what we are moving forward. Looks like there's a couple more questions here. Oh, looks
Just
like
real quickly before you go into the next question, if the people that are viewing this, you understand, we're not telling anybody anything, but we're sharing. But our wishes is to really instill the importance of critical thought. Critical thinking is key to really help them understand that not to look away from themselves and blame anybody, but look inwardly and afford yourself the right of your own integrity as you see things, and be courageous enough and brave enough to step up and share that. That's basically what we're trying to do, is instill that character development in our young people to really step up and be critical thinkers. I just wanted to share that, Tushka. Go ahead.
Oh, Pidana. Doesn't look like there's any more questions, but I just got schooled up. It's Missoula Community TV. I got the link. So yeah, we'll look into that. If there's any other questions from the viewers, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can shoot us an email too. It looks like we're at the closing of our hour-long time limit here, but ehopkins, EHOPKINS at fpcc.edu, or tchristian at fpcc.edu. Just shoot us an email, because ever since we've been doing this podcast, we'll do stuff. I'll get these emails from student organizations all over. Oh, can you send Tommy over here, do a presentation? It's like, oh no, he's busy, man. He works for us. But every once in a while, he'll go off and do MC a powwow, like he's over in Lethbridge. He's always getting asked to do things. So, but the cool thing, he's on our
Went up
team.
and did that Chetty Shakoi thing in Brandon, remember?
Went
up there and seen Orville, visited with Orville and all that good stuff again, and then stuff like that they asked me throughout in the country. And one of the things I just wanted to bring up while we're dealing with this issue here is the colleges, the universities, or some of these educational institutions also need to learn how to deal with their elders, eh? And are the old people, are the knowledge keepers, and we're old. I have a hard time getting up in the morning. I have a hard time getting to work. So it's not so much about being a good a good worker, but more of the knowledge that we share. Like my older brother Chia and Nicheole, Earl Bullhead, all these things, the colleges, the universities got to understand what they're paying their honorarium for, or whatever, is not so much the fact that they're present, but the knowledge that they bring and afford the people an opportunity. And I say that not from a white man's perspective, but from an Indian perspective, because again, like in my case, I travel all over Indian country to support and help people. I don't work for other people. I support them in their efforts to really deal with their this abstract learning process and the importance of land-based teaching. And in that, they afford me, they take really well care of me. They look after me, and that's an indication of respect. And all that stuff that may be shared is considered as an honorarium. And so there's a way to establish that. There's a way to get through that, but that the universities need to learn how to deal with their older folks, the ones that have that wisdom, if you will, that understanding. So I just wanted to share that because, again, we've been denied that access for whatever reason for how many years. Well, now we'd like to get involved. There are young people, older people that can provide guidance and direction in respects to these educational institutions, but sometimes they just don't know how to approach them. They get afraid of them. Don't be afraid to ask. We'll come and we'll help out and all that good stuff. So I just wanted to share that before we got off the air there, Toshka. And if you want to add to that, that would be beautiful.
Sure.
But just to help us all understand that. Oh, Hechitu.
Oh, Pidome. So actually, Tommy brings up a good point. And so there's all these little terms, right? And so one of them is intergenerational transmission of knowledge. Okay, pre-reservation, that transmission of knowledge from elders to the youth is a term called like woksape or ksape, is like that have that wisdom, right? So that was broken, and so this is our attempt as a tribal college to bring that process back. And so and back to this ideological paradigm shift. This applies not just to the student, this applies to educational institutions. So educational institutions, because of the regulatory authorities and all this and that, and actually Tommy speaks to this a little bit, it really forces administrations and boards to really kind of re-examine how they go about funding cultural initiatives. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean with the industrial model of 8 to 4:30 and all this stuff. And so especially with elders, we have to be creative in ways that we get them into these institutions so that we have intergenerational transmission of knowledge. So I'm glad he brought that up again. And so there's one other question or comment from Alicia. I will try to get back to her sometime, but it looks like says our org is going through with developing a land-based IKS curriculum for Portland State University. We'd love having you or Thomas talking with us. Are you open to an interview? Well, we both are, I would imagine. I don't want to speak for Dixie Tommy, but he's usually pretty gracious. But definitely, I believe we gave you our email. I'll put it again in the chat for everybody. I'll put mine in there, and then if you want to shoot us an email later, you can, and then we could talk.
Well, Toshka, if they want to get a hold of us at the community college, send it to you. Don't send it to me. I won't answer.
Yeah, but I'll make sure to include Tommy in on it. Yeah, because we also do presentations for like the American College Fund. The past couple summers, they'll have us do like wellness workshops, and we talk a little bit about that. So, but yeah, unless there's any other questions.
We're close, though. See, they need to understand we're very close, so that whatever goes to you will come to me as well. So
yeah, basically, me and Tommy work in the same department, so every day we're visiting about stuff. So we'll definitely convey the message. So yeah, if there's any other questions, feel free to shoot us an email. I don't want to take up everybody's time, and I want to thank Campus Compact for inviting us here today. So with that, I'll stop our share and let Josh or Carla, I'll give the reins back over to you. So Pidamea, wopida, tanka chichapido.
Thank you so much, Elijah and Tommy. And just to really feel lucky privileged to hear what's going on at Fort Peck Community College today. Quick plug, next week we'll hear from Burt Medicine Bull at Chief Dullknife College, same time, same place. So join us or look to the YouTube channel for the playback. Carla, anything from you?
No, I just wanted to express my gratitude to both Elijah and Tommy for what they shared with us, for um, sharing that knowledge, that deep knowledge that's been transmitted over generations. So we feel very privileged and honored for you sharing that today. So thank you.
Oh, Pidoma, thank you.